Thermopylae, the gorge where 300 Spartans lit a fire in history that has not been extinguished to this day. But today we are not telling the story of how they died. Today we will talk about the day when Sparta decided not to die, to kill. This time, the Spartans did not come out to defend. This time, they came to raise the pride of the entire Persian Empire. This was the moment when 10,000 Spartans swore Thermopylae would be avenged. And a war was about to break out on Greek soil that would make Xerxes' greatest generals look like their own. Because now Sparta was wounded, angry, and a wounded Sparta always breaks empires. Imagine a few Greek soldiers stagger into Sparta in the dark of night, the marks of Persian spears on their bodies, the blood of their comrades on their clothes, and only one sentence on their lips. Leonidas is gone. Hearing this, all of Sparta fell silent. The silence that hides, screams. The silence that comes before a storm. The mother did not look away from her son, but said, "Tomorrow is your turn." The father did not take his hand, but only said one word: revenge. And that night, the entire Spartan land made one decision. If the Persians had taken the breath of the 300 at Thermopylae, the Spartans would now take the breath of their empire from them. It was at this moment that Leonidas' nephew, General Pausanias, stood before Sparta. He made no long speech, no emotional phrase, just one command: we march. Not to defend, but to avenge. And for the first time, the land of Greece saw 10,000 Spartans march together with one goal: revenge. Every soldier knew that they were not the 300 of Thermopylae. They were the last breaths of the 300. They were anger. They were the unfinished battle of Leonidas. Xerxes heard that Sparta was coming. He did not laugh. Fell silent, because he knew 300 had stopped his army, so 10,000 would stop his empire. The field of Plataea was ready. The Persian Empire stood with its millionth army, but the Spartans had that weight in their feet that only comes in revenge. This war is not for land, not for power. This war is for memory. Even after 700 years, when the wind blows through Greece, it says this: 300 died at Thermopylae, but 10,000 took their revenge. The march began at the break of dawn, when Sparta was still cloaked in a thin veil of mist. 10,000 warriors moved as one living organism, their red cloaks fluttering like blood-stained banners in the pale morning light. There was no drumbeat, no trumpet, no fanfare. Only the crunch of leather boots against dirt, the synchronized clinking of bronze armor, the whisper of wind over sharpened spears. Each step carried the memory of Thermopylae, each heartbeat fueled by anger and the unshakable resolve of vengeance. Generals studied maps by torchlight, tracing every ridge, every valley, every narrow pass where Persian pride might falter. Scouts moved ahead, silent shadows among shadows, reporting back every sign of the enemy, every glimmer of campfires that betrayed the Persian presence. Sparta had not just sent an army, it had sent a storm, a tide of precision, ruthlessness, and unrelenting purpose. As they crossed rivers and climbed hills, the Spartan formation became more than a tactic. It became legend in motion. The phalanx was a single, iron-walled organism. Spears aligned like the teeth of a predator, shields overlapping in perfect geometry. Persian patrols stumbled upon them and were met with silence first, and then swift, deadly efficiency. A Persian scout who lived to return would later describe the sight as unreal. Thousands of men, red as blood, moving without a sound, and yet you could feel death in every step. No one could name a leader in the front or the back. The entire formation was one consciousness, one will, one embodiment of revenge. Weeks passed. Persian outposts began to crumble under the psychological weight of the advancing Spartans. Villages that had grown complacent in the shadow of Xerxes' empire whispered rumors of red warriors moving like ghosts, striking quickly and disappearing without trace. Sparta understood something Persia had forgotten. Warfare was not just about swords and shields. It was about fear, and the mind of the enemy could be shattered long before the first blade fell. One night, as Persian sentries huddled around a dying fire, they would hear the eerie sound of thousands of feet over distant stones, see the glint of bronze and crimson in fleeting moonlight, and flee before the war had truly begun. The Spartan march was teaching Persia a lesson that Xerxes' generals would never forget, the same lesson that Thermopylae had taught the world. Numbers mean nothing against discipline, focus, and a burning purpose. The first major engagement came near a narrow valley, where Persian cavalry thought to trap the advancing Spartans. Xerxes had sent his immortals, the elite, the pride of his army, confident they could crush this force and demonstrate that Sparta's revenge was nothing more than myth. But the Spartans had learned from Thermopylae. They had studied Persian strengths, noted their arrogance, their dependence on numbers, their reliance on overwhelming shock. When the immortals charged, the Spartans held firm. Shields clicked together in a wall of bronze. Spears stabbed forward in perfect synchronicity. Cavalry fell into the gaps they did not anticipate. Horses stumbled on narrow stones. And suddenly, the unstoppable charge was no longer unstoppable. Spartan discipline turned the tide before the fight had truly begun. When the valley echoed with the cries of Persian soldiers, Sparta remained silent, calm, deadly. Days turned into weeks, and the Spartan campaign became a legend in real time. They moved like shadows across the land, striking where the Persians least expected. Each victory was measured, surgical, designed to weaken morale, cut supply lines, and send the message across Xerxes' empire. Sparta remembers. Thermopylae was not forgotten. Each Persian general who fell, each outpost seized, was a tribute to those who had died in the narrow pass, a fulfillment of a promise that had survived blood, fire, and time. The Spartans were not just fighting for land. They were rewriting the narrative of honor, revenge, and legacy. The Battle of Plataea approached, and this would be the decisive confrontation. Xerxes' forces were vast, confident, and yet trembling under the shadow of Spartan wrath. The generals of Persia arranged their troops with arrogance, unaware that every detail, every ridge, every valley had been observed by the Spartans for months. Pausanias studied the terrain, plotting maneuvers that would turn Persian confidence into chaos. His orders were precise old line bait. The enemy cut their flanks and strike the command center with focused fury. The field became a chessboard, and Sparta moved its pieces with deadly intent. Each hoplite knew not only his role, but the role of every man beside him. They were 10,000 points of death, working as a single sword. The first clash shook the earth. Spears met shields. Shields met shields, and the ground trembled under thousands of feet. Persian generals expected to overpower with numbers. Instead, they were pierced by strategy. Spartan phalanxes rotated, adapted, and flowed like water through cracks in stone, cutting down formations that had believed themselves invincible. Immortals fell. Elite cavalry scattered. Xerxes' pride shattered in stages before the climactic moment. The center of the Persian camp. It was here that Spartan captains executed a maneuver that would be whispered across generations. A coordinated push, simultaneous feints, and a central strike through the enemy lines created chaos so complete that the command chain collapsed. Persian soldiers fought desperately, but leadership was gone. Each fall, each scream, each retreat fueled Spartan resolve. They were fulfilling a debt that was older than any man alive. Meanwhile, the Spartans did not ignore the land beyond. Scouts in allied Greek city-states disrupted Persian supply lines, raided their camps, and spread panic. Athens' navy ensured that Persia's logistical backbone was fractured, complementing Spartan land dominance. Persia's empire, vast as it was, could not withstand this coordinated storm. Every victory was meticulous, strategic, and symbolic. A direct counter to the humiliation of Thermopylae. The campaign was not chaotic. It was a precise, relentless machine of revenge. Even logistics, often overlooked, played into the narrative. Supplying 10,000 warriors across hostile terrain required foresight, planning, and coordination. Every wagon, every messenger, every ration was accounted for. Spartan generals understood that a broken supply line could undo even the greatest vengeance. They planned camps to control high ground, to protect resources, and to maintain the morale of soldiers who had witnessed death but now tasted the thrill of returning honor. The human cost was heavy every day, brought skirmishes, fatigue, and casualties, but the Spartans pressed on. Each loss, each wound, each sacrifice was the price of an unbroken promise. Weeks of campaign culminated in the final engagement at Plataea. Xerxes' generals underestimated the fire within the Spartans, the fury of men fighting for fallen comrades, for Leonidas, and for the honor of Sparta itself. Pausanias led a decisive maneuver. Flanking attacks combined with a direct assault on the Persian center. Spears pierced armor, shields shattered, and the Persian command crumbled. Xerxes' empire reeled, retreating in confusion and fear. The once mighty Persian soldiers who had marched into Greece with arrogance were now fleeing, broken and humiliated. Sparta's vengeance had been fulfilled. Thermopylae's debt was paid in blood, strategy, and unyielding will. The battlefield fell silent, save for the groans of the dying and the soft wind over Plataea. Spartans stood victorious, but not triumphant in joy. Their expressions were calm, reflective. They had not fought for conquest, for land, or for glory. They had fought to honor the fallen, to balance the scales, and to prove that no empire could survive the wrath of Sparta when justice demanded it. The land bore witness. The survivors carried stories, and the world began to whisper. The 300 died, but 10,000 avenged them. And now, the legacy of those warriors lives on. Sparta had reshaped not just a battlefield, but history itself. Persia's expansion was halted, its pride shattered, and the Greek world inspired Panhellenic unity, forged through shared struggle and Spartan leadership, laid the foundation for centuries of cultural and political development. Art, philosophy, and the spirit of democracy would thrive in the shadow of that vengeance. And though the Spartans returned to their mountains, their hearts remained on the plains of Plataea, a reminder that courage, discipline, and resolve could transform tragedy into legend. The story of these 10,000 warriors is a timeless lesson. Revenge, when guided by purpose and honor, can redefine the fate of nations. The memory of Thermopylae became a beacon, a fire that no Persian sword could extinguish. It is a story of discipline, strategy, sacrifice, and the unbreakable human spirit. And even today, as the wind whispers through the hills of Sparta, one can almost hear the marching steps, the silent phalanx, and the echo of a vow kept. We remember, we avenge, we endure. And so, as the sun sets over the fields of Plataea, as shadows stretch long over the fallen banners of Persia, the story concludes not with celebration, but with solemnity. For victory was never the goal. Honor was. Revenge was never mere anger. It was justice. Thermopylae had been a wound, but Plataea was the healing. 10,000 warriors, one unbroken spirit, a promise fulfilled across blood, fire, and time. And in that quiet aftermath, the world learned a truth that endures. Sparta dies not in defeat, it lives forever in vengeance, and history bows to those who refuse to forget.